So we interrupt your regularly scheduled lecture to talk to you guys today about hurricanes. And I've been putting it off because we haven't seen a whole lot of hurricane activity. I'm just going to keep this in this mode. I apologize for the extra slides in the way. We haven't had too much hurricane activity all summer, really. And now all of a sudden it's kicking in. And there's a few reasons that sometimes it takes longer than others, and we'll talk about that. Before we go any further, I want to take a minute and show you guys a site here, and this is more for the folks on the online class than you guys here on campus. But some of you do have perhaps an interest in watching the weather, and this is a pretty neat site, short of just your Weather Channel app giving you information. And this is NOAA, okay, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association. It's a government weather site. You don't really hear about them too much until a few years ago when the president started arguing with them. And then they made the news for a while. But otherwise, they've been diligently doing their job in the background for decades. And one of their jobs is keeping track of hurricanes. What caught my attention, and I'm not sure if I could even get the map to pan over that way, is that we've actually been hearing about a handful in the Pacific, which on our side of the Pacific you don't really hear about. Over by Japan, China, Asia, they get hurricanes, sure. But on the west coast by California, not so much. And it's not going to hit land. All right, at least it's not projected to. But nonetheless, since I've been paying attention, I've not noticed that. And so much to the extent that NOAA's website won't even allow you to go over and look. Actually here, not as their main page. So we could go over here and see the Pacific, and it's way, way out. Eastern Pacific, there's what I want. There she is, K. All right, Hurricane K. And this is neat. You could just hover over any one of these images, and down here it tells you indeed what it is, whether it's a storm, a hurricane, a depression, and you'll find out what all these mean in a couple of minutes. But this is neat. And again, I'm not necessarily jumping on board with Bill Nye and Al Gore and all those guys, saying, "Oh my God, this is the end." But this is different. This is different. Let's go back to the Atlantic, which is where you guys are used to hearing about them. And again, you've got any number of them going on. I don't think they're projecting Earl to track into land. No, I didn't think so. At least not where it matters, right? So you could click on any one of these hurricanes, and it'll give you more information about them. Danielle's just a tropical storm. You'll learn tropical storms could be on the way up or on the way down. Danielle may have already been a hurricane. So, just something to keep your eye on. Hurricanes, not directly, but hurricanes certainly can influence us here in New York. I think I talked about this a little bit the first day. But this far inland, you think you're safe. And again, it's nothing like near the coast, but we still certainly can get the rain bands. And not just from stuff coming up this way. All right, there have been some storms big enough, you'll see some images in a little bit, coming up through the Gulf here that have actually reached up to us as well. So, great little website. Just type in NOAA and hurricane or national hurricane, and it'll get you to the proper place. The folks at home are working on a all semester long project, a a natural disasters map. It sounds morbid, but it's really a way of keeping track of earthquakes, volcanoes, big storms, and so on and so forth. The idea being that, as I mentioned to you guys, that earth science is around you all the time, every day. Some of this stuff may seem so abstract that we talk about, but aspects of it are surrounding us all the time. So, so hurricanes. So this is some ancient stuff. This is like what we used to see back in the 70s and the 80s. I think they still have the same interrupt and emergency broadcast system thing. I haven't watched broadcast TV in a while, and when we last did, it was primarily cable stuff. So, but ABC, NBC, CBS, they might still interrupt this way, especially for storms. All right, so hurricanes. This is Hurricane Isabel, 2003. Isn't she pretty? That is just I hesitate to say a work of art, but it is just perfect. This is something that happens, not hurricanes, but me telling you how pretty this is. With scientists a lot in the news when they get interviewed, and they get caught up in the awe, the natural amazingness of something, and it's what they spent their life probably studying the last however many years, and so on and so forth. Imagine if you were an accountant and you got the biggest case of fraud and embezzling and whatever comes across your desk. Oh my God, you can't help but get excited about it, right? Just a little bit. You feel bad, oh my God, somebody was frauded and so on and so forth, but you're like, this is what I do. Well, it's the same thing when a volcano freaking blows its top or an earthquake crumbles, and they can't help but be a little excited, and sometimes that comes out in the interviews and people are like, oh my God, what's wrong with this person? It's what they do. All right, so just try to keep that in mind. Be kind when you see them. Maybe getting a little too excited about weather and so on and so forth. My favorites were always it was like a combination Columbia placement ad and rookie weather guy thing. But and they put this poor person who's probably been on the job a year maybe in this giant raincoat and a microphone, and everything's blowing sideways. Weather Channel used to do that all the time. I don't think they do anymore, but it was funny. It was very funny. So this is just perfect, and this is why we opened with this slide. I couldn't have put a better diagram to label kind of thing. So what the heck is a hurricane? You probably have a rough idea, but of course textbooks have to come along and ruin everything. We're not going to stay in knots. Very few of you know knots, I imagine. So we're going to talk about miles per hour, but I do list the knots in the background. 74 miles per hour. All right. It is a rotating storm, cloud system, a rotating system, with winds that maintain and exceed over 74 miles per hour. All right, we'll tell you what a tropical cyclone is in a moment. It's like on Wikipedia where that would be underlined blue, and you could click on it for a definition. In the northern hemisphere, which is our plane of reference, they circulate counterclockwise about their center. So remember this nice little picture there? All right. You can almost tell which way you'd have to twirl that to get it to wrap up. Imagine it like a roll of toilet paper that came undone, right? So you can see that is spinning counterclockwise. So even if you didn't know what hurricane it was, you could at least say, hey, that's northern hemisphere. And believe it or not, they do go the opposite direction in the southern hemisphere. But we're going to focus on for test questions for just general purpose because we live here. If I ask you which way do hurricanes rotate, counterclockwise. I think I've gotten to the point where on the test I put in parentheses, in the northern hemisphere, but so what's a cyclone? A system characterized by the rapid inward circulation of air masses around a low pressure center. Well, that's not a really helpful definition, is it? They're all about pressure, okay? And we're going to talk about, you're going to hear over and over again, a low pressure center, a low in the center, and so on and so forth. We word it a number of different ways. What we mean is compared to standard atmospheric pressure, okay? If you watch the weather, you might see 29 point whatever inches of mercury, they'll say every so often. Okay, we're comparing it to that, standard atmospheric pressure. And the reason this is important, maybe a handful of you aren't sure why the wind actually blows. Air moves from high pressure to low pressure. Wind is nothing more than air molecules moving from high to low pressure, okay? And it's a bit more involved, but generally speaking, when you get some really strong winds coming, you can assume there's going to be a big change in your weather. Be it a high to a low or low to a high, and different things come with each of those. But usually you don't get a whole lot of wind for no reason. And I'm just saying around here in town, not even related to hurricanes. So look for a weather change. So inward circulation. And believe it or not, this gets it spinning. There's a handful of basic physics properties we won't quote because we don't throw out a whole bunch of vocabulary words. But that this movement coming in from all sides actually starts this rotating. It's kind of the merry-go-round effect. All right, I know it's been a long time since you've had one of those on a playground, but you guys all remember merry-go-rounds. You've at least seen them on the internet, right? And all those kids jumping on it keep it spinning. All right? So, and when you jump off, of course, you go flying outwards. That's a different force. But it's the whole same idea. So this air coming in gets this rotating. And we'll show you pictures of these systems as they become more and more organized. And again, if you pay attention to the weather, you may hear very similar words when they talk about tornadoes. Okay, tornadic activity, as they say. They look for this comma shape showing up in the radar, and that's that rotation. Very similar. So you need a whole bunch of thunderstorms. Okay, it just forms from thunderstorms, but many, many, many of them coming together, and they just grow. And as you might expect, this happens out at sea, typically, where again those thunderstorms really aren't bothering anybody or anything. Right? They're just milling around out there. But as they merge, then they have more potential to cause some trouble. So I mentioned there's a reason for the lag, and I mentioned that there is a reason that they're worried about this with regard to global warming, which we don't call it global warming anymore, right? We call it climate change. Because not everything's going to warm. Some places will get cooler. Some places will just get drier. Some places will get wetter. Some places will get all three. It is way more complicated than we originally thought. So we're trying to stop saying global warming. I still say it because I said it for 20, 30 years. But 20 years at any rate. But now we're supposed to say climate change. So the reason they worry about the oceans getting so warm, because that's one of the contributing factors to hurricanes, is warm surface waters. And again, I don't know if you know this about water, but it takes a long time to heat up, and it takes a long time to cool down. So Hurricane season actually goes into November. You say, that's still not warm in November. Yeah, but the water's still warm. And hurricane season doesn't kick in right in May when the weather starts getting warm. It takes a little while. I forget when it kicks in. But again, it takes a while for the water to warm up. Well, if we're talking about overall concern that ocean level temperatures are rising, it's that much less that it has to warm up every year. It's that much less that it needs to cool down every year to still stay in that range. And what we're potentially looking at is not just bigger, badder storms, which is what they threaten you with, because that's scarier, but longer seasons. Okay, you get to the point, where almost all year is potential hurricane season. So that's the concern with the rising temperatures. So 81 degrees Fahrenheit, it's pretty warm, all right? But again, it's just superficial. That's easy to do with the sun. We're not talking about, 20 feet down, it needs to be 80 degrees. It's surface temperatures. So, and where do you think you're going to have that warmest water at? Near the tropics probably, right? And that's where we do see a lot of this starting to form, but we're seeing it further and further north, further and further south. So they're not making this crap up. There's actual data, okay, that there's cause for concern. We also need high humidity. Why do you think you need high humidity? You got to keep those storms fed, all right? Storms by nature, they burn themselves out. If you get this huge, think about a giant thunderstorm forming around here, and very seldom does it boom and bang and for hours upon end, all right? It's a self-defeating action. As it builds up that giant cloud and all that rain pours out of it, well, that rain is the cloud. You know that, right? That's the cloud particles get so big they fall out of the sky as raindrops. So we need fuel up in the atmosphere to keep these things fed. And that's the other thing that's sometimes odd for you guys. We're trying to make a hurricane at this point, and you'd be thinking, the typical is we don't want hurricanes. So we're telling you how to make a hurricane right now. Kind of anarchist cookbook kind of stuff here. So what are our three things so far? All right. We need high ocean temperatures. All right. I guess we don't have three things yet. We need high ocean temperatures, and we need a warm environment. And now comes our third thing. We need low wind shear. Wind shear, think horizontal wind. All right. Bless you. Again, I don't know how many of you could pull up an image of a thunderhead in your mind's eye here, but picture this giant storm cloud, right? If you have wind shear, every time that thing grows up, what's going to happen is the wind is going to blow away the top of it. It's an eraser. And also, it's going to be really difficult for the humidity to stay if you've got strong upper level winds. So we need to build up this storm. We build up that storm by continually feeding it and not wearing away at the top of it. So it really is a handful of rather, I don't want to say unique circumstances, but you got to have everything fall just right into place. Now, you've seen the word latent heat and a couple of these other I'm not getting into this. This isn't weather class. Even you folks online and Earth Science, okay? We're not going to get into that kind of stuff. But it is really all about changing phases, okay, liquid to gas, and the storage and the release of energy through heat. That's what drives all of this stuff. But we're leaving that way in the background. But the words are there, and I don't want you to fret because I'm skipping them and say, oh my God, am I supposed to know that word? No. If you do, awesome, all right? But you're not going to see the stuff about latent heat and transfer and all that showing up on our tests. So we good so far? So we need thunderstorms to build up. We need the water to be nice and warm, which is probably why the thunderstorms were building up in the first place. We need the humidity, which again allows it. It's all sort of nebulous. All right? It's not exactly steps, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You just need a set of circumstances coming together.